everybody, and welcome to another episode of My EdTech Life. Thank you so much for joining us on this beautiful Saturday morning, wherever in the world you may be. It may be even evening, or it may be well into Sunday. As always, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for making My EdTech Life what it is today. And of course, we couldn't do or have the success that we have if it isn't for amazing listeners, amazing audience such as yourself, and amazing friends and part of our personal learning family. Thank you as always. And I am really excited, hyped up, highly caffeinated. It may
There
sound
you
like
go.
two as well, but I am ready to go today because I am excited to talk to Mr. Jordan Orozco, who's joining us today all the way from the West Coast. So over there, I mean, it's 7 a.m. And I just want to thank you for joining us here early this morning. But I'm just excited because I get to nerd out with one of my favorite things, which is math and math talk. And I'm just excited to hear what you're doing and also how you're making math viral. So I am excited to get this conversation going. So, Jordan, how are you this morning?
I'm good. Thank you for having me on the show. I super appreciate it. It's my first podcast, so I'm excited. I was like, heck yes, I'll jump on this. Why not?
Awesome.
And
That
then,
is
yeah, you're right.
wonderful.
It's 7 a.m. on a Saturday, and I'm a little caffeinated too. I drank my coffee already. I got water.
Perfect. Well, Jordan, I'm really excited. Like I said,
Yeah.
and I just want to just give a brief background as far as how I came, or stumbled, I guess I would say, upon your profile and everything,
Yeah.
as I'm scrolling through, actually was TikTok. And then
Okay.
all of a sudden, I'm like, this math teacher here is using math manipulatives, and wait a minute, and it's not elementary. And
Yeah.
immediately I sent that TikTok video to our content math specialist and I said,
Mm,
look, check this out. I was like, if he can do it in high school or in the upper grades, why can't our high school and upper
yeah.
grades do this? So we were just thrilled. And after that, I just saved all your videos. I kept
Yeah.
sharing it with them. And now we use that as an example in our
Oh,
district. And so
wow.
that, yeah,
That's
exactly.
awesome.
Yeah. So I just want to let you know that I was really excited and it caught my eye and my attention.
Yeah.
So I immediately, that same day, I know I reached out
Yeah.
to you
Yeah, you
immediately
did.
saying, hey, can you be on the show? Can you be on the
Yes,
show? So now
absolutely.
I'm really excited that you're
Yeah.
here today. But
It's
before we get into that conversation, Jordan, give us a little brief introduction about yourself and your
yeah.
context in education so we can get this going.
Yeah, I am Jordan Orozco. I live in the East Bay area of California. I was born and raised here and lived all my life here, and just love the community that I'm a part of. This is my fifth year teaching in high school, and I actually teach at the same high school that I attended. So it's really fun to be connected to my community in that way. And I always, well, I don't know if I always knew I wanted to go back and teach there, but definitely once I got my credential and knew I wanted to move back home, I was like, where else am I going to teach if not the high school that I went to? So go Wolverines, because I love that school. But yeah, I've been teaching for 5 years, but I've actually been in education now. I have to do some math, like probably 11 years at this point. So I've been teaching for 5, but I was the other 6 years I was an instructional assistant actually, for special ed and resource classes, and that's sort of how I got into teaching and education. And so I really enjoyed that time because first I got to sub as an instructional aide and kind of got to hop around all the schools in the district and really all the grade levels. So I've actually taught in preschool and elementary and middle school and now high school. And I've kind of seen like that whole evolution of going through all those different grade levels. And I think it was super helpful in getting me to where I am now, because without that, I don't know if I would be half as decent as I am now.
You know what? But this is what I love. What you just said is that you have been able to see all different lenses, all different
hmm
areas. And I think that that really gives you that expertise in that now that you're at high school, you
Yeah.
saw the value add that manipulatives,
Yeah.
concrete, pictorial, abstract model can have for our students. So
Yeah.
I'm just really excited about that and the work that you're doing because, for many, like even myself, growing up thinking, well, I'm not a math person.
Yeah.
I've never
Yeah.
been a math person. And until I started working with our content math specialist, and he brought
hmm
out, and that's because I came in teaching algebra, coming in from
hmm
business, but I taught it
Got
the
it.
way I was taught, and it was
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
strictly all algorithm, all
Yeah.
algorithm, all
Yeah.
algorithm.
Just that
And I
plug and chug, put the numbers in, just do it. Yeah, not really even understanding what you're doing, but just, do as I do, follow this procedure and just get
yes.
yeah, makes
And you know
sense.
what? The biggest impact was moving into this position as an instructional technologist and
Mm,
having that experience from high school math and then elementary math as well. And then coming into this position and our content math specialist being a huge advocate of the concrete pictorial abstract
yeah,
model, a lot
yeah,
of research based with that. And then he started kind of showing me things, and I was like, I honestly, like, at that split moment, my first year meeting him, I really said, you know what, I felt like I did a disservice to my students
yeah,
because, like you said, it was plug and chug,
yeah,
do as I do, and that's it. But
yeah.
they had no concept of number sense and
Yeah, yeah.
understanding why we're doing these
Yeah, the why,
things.
yeah, yeah, and when I first started teaching at my high school, I was in the same boat too. It was like, I just wanna, yeah, do as I do. Like, I know how to do this. I know why it works. I know why, we have a function and we're throwing in an input, we're getting out an output, like we're combining X's, all this stuff. Like, it makes sense in my brain, so why doesn't it make sense in yours? And no, we're not gonna I don't wanna spend the time, reviewing all that stuff because it's like, let's just do it. But I will say when I started, we used this book, it's called CPM at my school, and we had this coordinator. Her name was Gail, so shout out Gail, because she made me learn, and I'll say my mentor teacher Maria as well. Both of them kind of gave me these tiles and kind of forced me to learn it, and really helped me understand like how these tiles could be super helpful for them. And that is what I think helps me now, and for me to understand, it was coming, like you said, like in a different way with it. Like, oh, I mean, I get it. I know how it works. My brain is a mathy brain. It just clicks for me. But for some of these kids, it doesn't. And so, trying to go at a different angle with it. And if it's using these tiles, which some people might say is, childish, and that's meant for elementary school, counting tiles and stuff. But it's not childish if it helps them understand algebra. It's like a stepping stone. If that's what the little crutch they need to get there, then let's do it. Why not? It's not going to waste any time as long as we can, at least the kids understand
Yeah.
what they need to know.
And you hit on something there that I really like too as well. The thought that these tiles, these manipulatives, are seen as childish, yet our textbooks have illustrations and pictures
Yeah,
of it, and yet teachers still don't make that
yeah,
connection because
yeah.
it's like, well, and they're like, well, no, that doesn't work. I was like, but wait a minute, the people writing these textbooks are
Mhm.
experts in their field. They're showing you a picture of manipulative, so let's make that connection, and let's bring these out, even though they may be paper or if they're the actual
Yeah,
physical manipulatives and so on. So oftentimes that's the conversation that we have. It's like, well, I don't need them. Those are too childish. They need to, number one, I've heard, no, they need to memorize their
yeah.
times tables. They need to
Mhm.
go through their times tables. And why isn't this already done by the time I get them? Now I'm doing their work, and that's not the way it should be. And I need to continue on and on. And the thing is with the tiles, like you said, it really does make that connection. The students are visually seen. And then when you see those light bulbs go off
Yeah,
like
yeah,
continually, I'm like, they get it. They get
yeah,
it, and they're going to take that with them because
yeah,
they've kind of mastered that skill.
yeah.
So what has been your experience, like you said, as teaching and using the manipulatives? Can you explain to me maybe what your experience was the first time you learned about these
Yeah,
and started using them,
I can
and then the
definitely.
first time you brought them out?
Yeah.
So walk me through that
Yeah.
experience.
I will say up front, I'm no expert in these tiles. Even this year, I hadn't used them probably in 2 years because I was only teaching geometry for a bit. And then this year I went back to teaching algebra 1. First month, we decided that, we're going to hit them with the fundamentals. We want to make sure we have like a full month of pre-algebra review just to make sure that everything we're building at the rest of the year, right, is based off of combining like terms and solving one-step, two-step equations. And I had to go to my mentor teacher, Maria, and I was like, I forgot how to use these again. Like, it's been a minute and you need to like get a refresher. And so, yeah, so I kind of came upon them on that. And the first time I actually taught with them, I didn't think that they were effective. And that might have been because of me teaching with them, because I don't think I was as comfortable with them as I needed to be for my students. And that, first year teaching is always super rough. So that's a whole nother story. But I will say now, using them, in my class. We've used them for about a month. And at this point, we've sort of kind of phased them out. The goal is to not rely on the tiles the entire school year. It's not to always bring them out for any little thing we're doing. But initially, right after summer vacation, their brains are kind of not as fresh as they need to be. And when we're reviewing these concepts, it's just really helpful to give them a tactile, hands-on, manipulative to use on their desk to visually see. And for some students, it clicks really quick and their brains got it. And then they're like, Mr. Roscoe, I don't want to use the tiles anymore, because every day I'm like, grab the tiles, get your bag. Cause I have my bag right here full of tiles. I'm like, grab your bag of tiles. Let's go. We gotta use them out, make the expression. And then they start to resist because they're like, I don't need it. And I'm like, well, great. That's the point. We don't want you to use the tiles all the time, but they're there if you need it. And I do have some people, some students today that we had a test last week who wanted a bag of tiles. And I was like, fine, that's it. If you need it, use it. Because it's not a cheating tool at all. It's a way to help them access that level of curriculum that we're trying to get them to. Yeah. And unfortunately, like you mentioned, like some students don't know their times tables. They don't know those things that we need them to know, like right off the bat. And at this point, in my class, at my high school level, where we're trying to get them to get to Algebra 1, I can't spend a week on times tables. I can't spend, luckily this year, we decided to give a month towards reviewing pre-algebra to help them. But normally we can't spend that time because we're trying to get them to access a higher level of math, And I think that might be, I actually had a conversation with one of my teachers this past week about that, and how that it's kind of like a self-perpetuating problem where the kids come into the math class, they don't know their times tables, they don't know their fractions, they don't know absolute value or number line. And so the teachers spend time on that instead of actually teaching the curriculum that they're supposed to be teaching. And so then what happens is they're still focusing on that, that fourth, fifth, third grade math, and the kids still aren't getting it, but then they're not learning the new stuff that they need to be learning. And at this point in my class, it's grab tiles, grab a calculator. I need you to just punch those in, because I'm trying to teach you about functions and graphing quadratic equations and, moving up that ladder of math. And we fortunately just can't stay at that base level the whole year, because we probably would be the whole year.
Yeah. But again, going back to what you're saying, and kind of like our little pre-chat earlier, it's really that vertical alignment is so important. And understanding that just because you're a fourth grade teacher doesn't mean that you don't have to worry about, quadratics and functions and all of that, because you're building on that foundation as you continue to build up and up. And the conversations have been, high school teachers are like, what's going on? Because when they get to high school, it's like, they can't do this, they can't do this, they can't do this. Well, because it's all foundational, and you have elementary teachers that'll say, well, that's not my problem, let them fix it in high school. But our content math specialist is the one that has to go in there and fix it in high school and fix those issues. So, to me, that's what it kind of sounds like, that when the students get to you, obviously there have been a couple of gaps there. And then, you still have to put your part of it to continue moving them forward.
And there's definitely a stigma too with math. Like people are okay with the idea of like, oh, I suck at math, like I'm not good at it. Oh, well, let's move on. But no one ever says like, oh, I suck at reading or I suck at writing, so I'm just not going to do it. I'm not going to try. I'm not going to make an effort. It's like, no, you work on those skills, right? We don't, that's an area where we focus a lot of attention on. And we're like, oh no, you're going to learn to read. You're going to learn to write. And we make sure the kids know how to do that. But I feel like at elementary school and middle school, if we get this idea of, oh, I'm bad at math, therefore I can never learn it. And then we just say, oh yeah, that's okay. And then unfortunately, and I see it at my school, there's other teachers who are like, oh yeah, I suck at math. Like, I can't do it either. It's okay though. That's what calculators are for. But it's like, no, we have to change the stigma of, I'm bad at math right now, but if I put the work in and I try hard and I work with my teacher, we'll get you there, but it's this like kind of like a mental block for them sometimes, that they just accept that, oh, I'm not good at math. But it's like, no, you could be good. You could be great. We just got to get you there.
Yeah. And I agree with you. I mean, and for myself, my first experience coming into teaching, I came in from, business, marketing. So it's really just highly financed. And so when I went into teaching, they're like, well, you have enough hours to be, a math teacher, so we'll put you in math. I was like, all right. And so they threw me in a classroom, mind you, no teaching experience at all. I was going through alternative certification program.
Yeah.
But I mean, I was like, okay, I'm comfortable with the subject. I'm okay. But going back to what you're saying, it is important also to know your students and really try and personalize the learning process for them, because coming in coming in with that business sense is like, okay,
Mhm.
I've got 27 different customers that I have to sell algebra 1 to. And although this is the only way that I may know it, because
Yeah.
obviously I'm going to revert back to going my comfort zone, which is
Yeah.
this is the way I was taught. So this is the way I'm going to teach it.
Mhm.
However, I learned real quick that even though I taught it a certain way, I had students that were not going to understand it that way. So I kind of had to adapt. And then as I'm teaching, I'm learning at the same time as well.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that way you can go ahead and help all of your students. And I
Yeah.
think that's something that's very important that we miss out on,
Yeah.
that, we're at all different levels in that classroom as well.
Yeah, and yeah, I'm definitely you're saying like, yeah, I'm the one that's teaching the curriculum, but I'm always learning, lifelong learner. I'm always trying to find ways to engage these kids, and I love the tiles, and I'm glad that my school utilizes them in an effective way to help them. And it's not just with combining like terms and
Mhm.
stuff, but it's when we get to quadratics and we're factoring and distributing all those, it really really helps them like visually see it. Whereas when I was taught, I didn't have that, but
Yeah.
thankfully when I was taught it, it just clicked in my brain,
Mhm.
and I learned how to foil when I was distributing quadratics. And I was like, oh, foil makes sense. I still think of foiling when I do it, but I don't teach foiling now. I've never used that word in my class because that's it's like a procedural way. Like it's just a
Mhm.
quick thing for them to know, whereas they're not really understanding why that actually happens. And so that's why I think the tiles are
See
super
that,
helpful.
and that's something else that's great too. Now, keep in mind, like, I mean, again, I'm speaking of, I can speak of this too, because I have years of experience in math
Mhm.
as a teacher. And I'm realizing, like I said, when I met my math content specialist, I realized, man, a lot of those procedural things like that we think of real quick,
Yeah.
they make sense in the ability to just do the problem quickly,
Yeah.
but there's no thought into,
Yeah.
well, why am I doing this and what does this really represent?
Yeah.
So we've got, usually it's, what is it? It's when they do fractions and then they multiply fractions and then they do the crisscross and they do
Yeah.
all this
Yeah.
other stuff,
Yep.
because later on, that once you put that negative in front of that fraction, it's going to mess things up.
Yeah.
But again, in the lower grade levels, it's like, well, this is the way I teach it because it makes it easy. But
Yeah. It's
we need
just
to
quick.
go,
Yeah.
yeah, we need to go into the concept, and that's so important.
Yeah, I was just talking. It's so funny because I have a student who is in pre-cal now. She's a senior, and she is. I had her as a freshman in my algebra 1 class. And when I teach slope, for example, I know in middle school when I was taught, slope is rise over run. It's a
Mm.
fraction, rise over run. That's it. And I never use that term in my class, rise over run, because of the fact that a slope can either go up if it's positive, then yeah, you're rising. But if it's negative, then you're not rising, you're falling. And so students get in their brain, oh, rise over run, rise. Oh, I always got to go up. So whatever that number is, I'm always going up. But it's not always going to be going up. It's because it's dependent on if your slope is positive or negative, like things like that. And so I instead, it was so funny because I haven't taught her math for a freshman year, so 3 years now. And she goes, oh yeah, Mr. Roscoe never said that. He said delta Y over delta X. And I'm like, yeah, because that's what I teach him. And then I said, what does that mean again? And she goes, oh, the change in Y,
Change.
change over X. And I was like, yes, like that's what I want you to think of slope as. Is where how are we changing in the Y, then how do we change in the X? And again, it's easier just to say rise over run. Or in geometry, we the big one is SOHCAHTOA for
Yeah.
sine, cosine, and tangent. And it's like, yeah, we can learn these quick things, but I want you to actually know what they mean and where it comes from and what's the point of it. And so yeah, and I don't mind them learning, especially with SOHCAHTOA. Yeah, learn that right before the final. I'll teach them that little thing. Sure.
Mhm.
So when the final they remember. But leading up, it's like, no, what is sine? Like tell me what sine is, what's the fraction equaling? And so yeah, that's where we go
No,
with it.
man, I can nerd out with you like for
I know.
a whole hour
I
just
was gonna
talking
say,
about this.
I did a bunch of news interviews this past summer about me going viral for a minute and on the radio. I never got to like actually talk about the math, so this is fun.
Yeah, yeah, I'm sure because it's like, oh no, let's just talk about the videos because I
Yes,
mean
yeah,
we can't go deep like this. So that's
yeah,
great, and that's what I love, that I can make that connection with you,
yeah,
and
yeah,
coming in through my
yeah,
experience as well, and
yeah,
doing that. So,
yeah.
yeah, so uh, there's some of those things, like I said, going back to building them up in
Mhm.
elementary and then building them up into high school. the model that we use, or at least our math content specialist has implemented or trying to implement, for the last 6 years, is the CPA model, which is
Mm.
starting off with the concrete, the manipulatives,
Yeah.
and then working their way to the pictorial. And you can do a concrete
Oh.
pictorial. So the students then will actually draw the representation. So we walked into this amazing second grade classroom, and the teacher, all the kids were sitting in little groups of four. They all had their base 10 blocks out and everything. And so she would put a number up, and they were just working up to the hundreds. So it was, hundreds, tens, and ones. And she would put a number up. And then the kiddos on their paper, obviously, they had the place value chart. So they would go ahead and line them up. And it was just amazing to see the kiddos
Mm.
just really excited that
Yeah.
they are constructing a number. Now, they may not understand the full on concept yet, but they're
Mhm.
seeing how this
Yeah.
matches up. And then the next task was like, okay, I'm going to give you the number, but what I want you to do is now, instead of using the blocks, I want you to draw the
Mhm.
representation. So it was nice
Yeah.
for them to see. And so then they make that association that anytime they'll see that square, the full on square, that's already like their hundreds. And then
Yeah.
they draw a little line, that's their tens, and then the tiny little square, that'll be their ones.
Yeah.
And then for them to be able to do that, it was just wonderful and amazing. And then the last task, which really blew my mind, she says, okay, we're going to go into a bigger number, and you may not have enough blocks,
Yeah.
but I want you all to work together. And it was still in the hundreds. I think it was like maybe like 732. So all four kids get up because they had limited blocks, and then they're thinking, okay, here's 700. So it's like, okay, we need seven of these. But what I loved, and this is where that aha moment was, like, this is what we need more, was when they didn't have enough hundreds, what they did is they just counted out the tens and formed their own hundreds.
Yes, there you go.
And
Perfect.
then they counted up and if they didn't have enough tens, they counted up
Yeah.
10 little ones. And they're like, okay, here we have 700. Now we got to work on 30. And that to me was,
Yeah.
these kids understand it.
That's so awesome.
They get it.
Yeah, that's the whole point, is that aha moment. I'm learning now that CPA thing, that's what my book and my fellow teachers, we do at our school. I didn't know it had a name. That's exactly what we do. We start with very simple expressions so they can use the tiles, and then I increasingly make them more and the quantity increase. So now instead of just 3 or 4 X's, now they need 27 or 44. And then they're like, Miss Roscoe, I don't have enough tiles. I'm like, okay, well, think about it. Like, you visualize that you have them still, but now think about what's actually happening, so they can kind of move from the tiles, like you're saying, just to the more abstract, just solving it on a paper. That's awesome.
Yeah. And
that's
and
cool
so
to know that they do it in second grade.
and so that's the goal. And so essentially the conversation is with upper grades. It's like, look, you don't have to go through the whole model, but he said you can do just concrete, abstract, concrete, abstract. He said the pictorial, don't worry about it too much, up in the upper grades. But he said, and he mentioned this, and he says it himself, look, the 1 year in a previous school district that I did not do concrete was my worst year that I had scores. But when I brought it back, even though it was just concrete, abstract, the kids did great and performed. So let's go back a little bit. And I missed this point in the conversation, because you mentioned a couple of things here where you said you give all of the students tiles, but eventually the goal is kind of wean them off. They kind of take themselves off. And we actually had a conversation this week saying, these supports, it's like, if it's good for all students. So in other words, we said, okay, this is our net that we're going to go ahead and put all our students in here. They're all going to use the tiles. But eventually, those that, don't need them anymore, we can go ahead and take them out of their net. But we're still covering those that do need those additional supports. One of the things here in Texas is that tier 1 instruction, in order for a student to be able to use manipulatives on the state exam, is that tier 1 has to use them. So a lot of times, many teachers may feel very reluctant to use those manipulatives, but yet then when it comes test time, it's like the kids are losing out. We're not giving them the full on all the tools that they need for success. So that's one of the components of the thought process of, we need to bring them all out. And then the question is always, well, why am I going to use them if not everybody's going to be able to use them on the test? Well, we understand that, but you're still building that concept. And like you said, you're going to have those kids that are going to be picking up on it real quick. They
Yeah.
won't need them, but the students that will need them, they'll be able to use them on that state exam. And I think
Yeah.
that's something that's very important there.
Yeah, I know. I wish my kids could use them on the state exam. They can't in our state either, in California, but that's not until like April. And so
Mhm.
again, it's the hope is that they start to wean off of it and eventually get it. And but just for any quiz or tests in my class, any assessments that I create with my department and we administer,
Mhm.
we let them use it because why not?
Good.
You know, like it's a tool. We also let them have a calculator with them. That's another tool to use, and it's how they access those tools to help them reach that higher level of thinking. That's all we're going after.
Oh, that is awesome. I love that, Jordan. Man, that
Cool.
that just makes my heart happy just
Awesome.
hearing that, you know?
Yeah,
And so yeah, that's wonderful.
yeah.
Oh man. Okay, so Jordan, before we get into, because again, like I said, for initially I was like, man, this guy is great on math, and then all of
Yeah.
a sudden I'm like, whoa, this guy is all around, like news. He's everywhere, you
I'm
know,
all over the place.
and making videos and everything, and that's why I titled the show, "Hey, making math go viral."
Yeah,
I'm like, this is great.
yeah.
So let's talk about that. Where did the idea come from to just really say, okay, this is what I need to create, or I want to
Mhm.
create something to engage my students? You know, walk me through that
Yeah.
process or that idea.
So when COVID happened and the schools got shut down that March of 2020, I needed a way to have a way to access the content to my kids, and I had always wanted to start a YouTube channel. Never had the time because teaching just sucks all your personal lifetime away, and I always wanted to make it though. So when I'm all of a sudden at home and the world shut down and there's nothing to do, I was like, why don't I finally try to create this and get this going? So I started up my YouTube channel, That Math Magician. I had a terrible profile logo that I made myself. And then eventually I reached out to my brother and my brother got it done for me. And he just made an amazing profile picture that I was so happy for. But I started then creating some tutorials for my kids. We were trying to still give them problems for that like 2 months, that April and May. We were trying to still give them a little content, and it was a nice way for me to still deliver that content over Zoom, because it's incredibly hard as a math teacher to teach virtually because you need to write, and see their work, and it's super, super difficult. So I started just making those videos from that. And then throughout the whole, I was that following year, the 2021 school year, we were distance learning the entire year. So I never met those kids in person. And so I was always in this room teaching. I have my tablet with me and was always screen sharing all the stuff that I'm doing. And then I just kept making videos for them, things that they could call back to, because it's a great supplement to the actual instruction. And there's always some confusion, like, well, math is an active thing. You have to be a part of it, to actively participate. You can't just passively sit and watch a video and learn. And that's super, super true. And what my hope is for my videos is that they're being taught the stuff in their class. They go home, they're struggling with their homework. Mom and dad forgot how to, factor a quadratic because they haven't done it in 20 years. They can hop on my YouTube channel, see a quick video, and it kind of just re-sparks their brain up, So that's at least the hope. So I just kept chugging out videos. And then when we finally came back to school last year, I had made the TikTok account because my students were like, Mr. Orozco, you have to make a TikTok. Like, everyone's on there. So I made the TikTok, and then I just started. Initially, it was just like silly math dad jokes that I would tell. And I would have the camera on me, and you could hear their reactions, their groans and their moans. And they're like, "Oh, you suck," and all that stuff. But it was super fun. And then this year, when I started teaching, I was like, I've never shown a video of me actually teaching. Like, it's always been funny stuff like me just telling jokes with the kids, or, making TikTok trend videos with my students to kind of engage with them, And so this past year I was like, well, why don't I show that aspect of it? Why don't I show how I'm teaching? And it just happened to be the algebra tiles that I was starting off with. And so when I made that video, I was actually with my parents that night at this event, and I was like, Mom, Dad, I was like, look, like this video. I said, I left the house and it was at 5,000 views. Now it's at 10,000. And then we eat our tacos, and I look back and I'm like, it's at 30,000, it's at 40,000. And now it's almost at 1 million views of me teaching with these tiles. And I'm like, what the heck? It's just insane, super insane. But going back, my hope for my TikTok and my Instagram accounts is that as the kids are scrolling, they might scroll and hit a video of mine, and they might learn something. It might refresh something in their brain. They might get a little math for like 45 seconds. That's the hope. But yeah, it's been crazy.
Oh, but that's wonderful, and I love that. I mean, we
Yeah.
need more of that, and I
Yeah.
think that's the other component. I know the mission and vision of this show is always to connect educators and creators one show at a
Mhm.
time. But to
Yeah.
see lately, I've been finding a lot of educator creators or edutators. I don't know what I want to
Yeah,
name it,
maybe.
but anyway, but it's wonderful that we find educators that are stepping outside the box
Yeah.
and really just putting themselves out there
Yeah.
and giving resources to help educate others. And like I said, when I found you, I was like, man, this is legit. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
this is wonderful. This is the
Thank you.
mission that we're trying to
Yeah.
do. And there's somebody else out there that's doing it. And then we can
Mhm.
use it as an example and say, look, I know that maybe this may be something new, but it's to you, but it's not something that is new to others. And then we can
Yeah. Yeah.
explain and show and share how you use them. And even in that video that I saw, the first one, I remember you said, "Oh, I did a problem. It was too big. I don't have enough tiles." But and then you said, "Maybe I'll make it a little smaller next time." But I
Yeah.
was like, "That's so real." I mean,
Yeah.
hey,
Oh, I
you know
know.
what? Those are some of the things that we will run into as
Yeah, oh my
teachers.
gosh. I
But
made I made that worksheet over the summer, and I was prepping like, "Oh, I'm gonna be such a good teacher." Then when I got in the moment, I was like, I put too many tiles. Why did I write
yeah,
these many?" So I'm over
yeah.
trying to count as many as I can.
Yeah, but I mean, again, just that realness of it, but the fact that
Yeah.
you're using it and the students are engaged because the
Yeah.
students were answering and
Yeah.
you're going through step by step. And then
Yeah.
the most recent video too that I caught was the one with functions and the
Yeah.
function machine, and I
Mhm.
just love the way that you explain it, and just
Thank you.
making things so simple and to understand in that 1 minute to 2 minutes on TikTok. And I think for a lot of our students, that's the way they're learning now. I
I
mean, we
know.
need to really teach as quickly as possible the concept and then give them a break into like, okay, here's what we did, now
Yeah.
you practice. Okay,
Mhm.
now let's come back and fix any misconception. Now let's practice two
Yeah.
more. All right, we see the mastery, and then you can go walk around and then come back to me, and then let's practice one more time, and then that's it. Engage them instead of just being that sage on the stage where you have
Yeah.
an hour and 30 minutes here in our school district, hour 30 minutes of
Oh,
just
wow.
sitting in
Yeah.
the front.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
the students are gonna be checked out,
I could
within
never.
10 probably.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
do we do 140 minutes at my school. We have a
Oh, wow.
100-minute block. And
Uh-huh.
I always tell them, "You don't wanna hear me talk for 100 minutes. I don't wanna hear myself talk for 100 minutes." So normally those videos that I'm capturing, that's like the warm up, the first like
Mhm.
10, 20 minutes of it. Really most of the classes that they work in groups. They are discovering the curriculum on their own, and I'm just kind of floating around helping them access that. And it's tough and it's really hard for them at times because they're so used to, like you said, the sage on the stage just
Yeah.
telling them what they need to know. And what we're trying to get them to do is to figure it out on their own, to try to discover the math on their own with what they already know,
Mhm.
kind of pushing them a little bit every day and to figure it out in their groups and to really work and talk. Cause like you said, like we need to talk in math, right? We need to collaborate. It's such a collaborative, what is it? Educational branch that we have to
Yeah.
use. It's not like you're reading by yourself. It's like you have
Mhm.
to actively work to learn this stuff. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
yeah. They don't want to hear me talk for 100 minutes. It'd be
Yeah.
terrible.
And I was gonna ask you, do you do any by any chance include any writing in your math course,
Oh, I
for
don't. I
students?
probably should do more of that. Yeah, I mean, we
Okay.
do definitely at the end of the class, we have learning logs that we do,
Okay.
and I mean, now I just think about it. I guess we do. Yeah. So at the end of it,
Yeah.
we have a learning log. Usually, the last problem is asking them to basically summarize what they learned, or go back to the initial problem and see, okay, now can we fix that, and how can we now do it? Because initially we didn't know how to do it, but over the course of that 100-minute period, now you know. So what clicked for you? What's working for you?
I love that. It's a beautiful reflection piece at the
Yeah.
end, and then they can go ahead and write out, their thought process.
Yeah.
And see, and that's one of the things that for me, it wasn't until later on in my career in the classroom before I transitioned,
Mhm.
was the thought process of students when I took myself off of that stage and just became that facilitator and
Yeah.
allowed them to discover, like you said, the curriculum and working in groups and so on. I was in awe of
Mhm.
the thought process of every student because no two students are alike. Well, there may be some, but maybe they weren't in that same group. But then it allowed me now to make that connection of
Yeah.
how to present concepts or new materials to that specific type of thought process and then the other thought process. And it made me a better teacher
Yeah.
because I was able to present the material in many different ways. And like you said, we're lifelong learners.
Mhm.
And so just to be able to learn from my students was very valuable. So that reflection piece, I
Yeah.
know that that's definitely
It's
valuable
huge.
for you too as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah. Very huge.
Excellent. All right. So, Jordan, let's go ahead and because I'm a big fan and we were kind of nerding out here, I'm
Yeah.
going to go ahead and pull up that shared screen.
Oh, yeah. Let me
And
pull it
just
up
for
on
our
mine.
audience members that may be watching or catching us on the replay and watching this, and I'll probably make this a little clip too as well. You're going to give us a little demonstration of what
Yeah.
it is that you do, but this is going to be with virtual tiles. So let me
Yes.
go ahead and bring this up here real quick. And let's go ahead and share. Let's see here. What does it say? Add to stream.
Yeah.
All right. All right. There you go. So we've
Perfect.
got our expression here. And so it is 2x plus 3 plus 3x plus 7 minus x minus 4. All right,
Lots of
Jordan,
stuff
walk us
going
through your
on.
process.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so normally we would use actual physical tiles, and when I did distance learning, we tried to use these virtual tiles. It's through my book that we use, CPM, and I put a link in this in the chat so you can share it later too. But you can use these tiles virtually to help you. It did not go over so well virtually with them because it's just they need that tactile manipulative with them. But what's really nice is I'm just going to do a quick introduction of these tiles. So we always start off with our unit tile there. It's the one tile, and we call it the unit tile because all the sides are a length of 1. That's kind of like how we define the unit tile. Their length is 1. And then what we do is we throw out this X tile, and I don't tell them it's called the X tile initially. But what I ask them to do is to take that and then figure out what they notice about the X tile. And so when they have it on their desk, they'll take the little blue tile and they'll line it up with that side, and they'll go, oh, well, that matches exactly. Like that links up perfectly. So then if this side length on my unit tile was 1, then the X tile, right, that little side length there must also be 1 because they're both matching up exactly, right? And so that's kind of big for them to realize. Then I say, okay, well, now find the other side, that longer side. And so then what they do is they start grabbing some of these unit tiles, and what they notice is that they're not all the way lining up. Let me see if I can zoom in just a little bit more, make sure we can really see that. There we go. Nice and big. They notice that it doesn't line up exactly, right? It hangs over a bit. And so then I start to ask them, okay, well, then what is that length? Because we know the top length is 1, right? What's that side length going to be? And then they're going to say, oh, well, it looks like maybe 2 point, I don't know, 2 point, oh, sorry. Yeah, 2.8, maybe 2.7. We don't know. And so I tell them, since we don't know the length, right, and we don't have an actual number for that, what do we use in math to show that we don't know what the integer is? And then they realize, oh, we use a letter, we're going to call it X. That's why we have this as our X tile. And so it's a good way for them to understand why we use X in math, because I always hear, math was easy until the letters started showing up. The letters are just numbers we don't know. I have no idea how long this side length is for this tile. So since I don't know what it is, we'll call it X. And then we do the same thing with Y. And then when I'm not going to throw the Y tile in, but we do the same thing. We notice that, oh, I also can't figure out how long this Y tile is. But I also know it's not the same as this other X tile. And so that's when they start to learn, oh, I need another letter. I can't just call this one X as well because they're not the same. And so it's a really nice visual way for them to start to understand that. So anyway, this is fun, by the way. I really like talking about math like this. Okay, so when we get to these expressions now, and so we give them something like this that says 2x's plus 3 plus 3x's, I tell them to build it out with the tiles. Like physically get your tiles, put it on your table, and let's see if we can start combining it. So I asked them, okay, we need 2x tiles. So we get the 2x tiles. And then we want 3 of the unit tiles. So we grab 3. And they have to practice building out the expression so they can visually see what's happening. And so I'll build it out real quick. We got our 3x's. And then look at me still making an expression with a bunch of tiles. It's okay. We can watch me pull 7
No,
out.
it's all good. This is great. I love it.
Yeah. So then we have our 7 tiles here. And then we get to minus x. And so on the physical tiles, when you flip them over, every single tile here, and all of these tiles, they're like we have them in a bag for them. When you flip them over, they're all red. And the red side sort of signifies that it's a negative term. And so on this, if I double click, nope, not double click, if I just tap it, then it's showing that, oh, well, that's a negative x tile. So now I can show that as that's negative x. And then if I have minus 4, I can grab, and I might cheat here and just copy and paste because I'm getting lazy now. There we go. I have my 4 tiles, but it's -4. So now I have those there as well. So that's our whole expression sort of built out. And so we kind of go over it. Okay, we have 2x's plus 3 plus 3x's plus 7 minus an x minus a 4. And so then when we say, okay, let's start combining like terms, they can visually see, right? Like terms, another word for like tiles, group up the tiles that are similar. Let's start figuring out what we have. Because, and if I just focus on the first 2 terms, the 2x plus 3, a lot of time in my class, when they see 2x plus 3, they write 5x's. They say, oh, 2x plus 3 is 5x's. And then I show them, when we take these tiles here and we group them up, right? Is that the same as having 5x tiles? And then I actually like grab these tiles and show them, like, I don't think you're saying, right, 2x plus 3 is 5x's, but this is 5x's. This right here is not 5x's, right? And so we can't combine those. And that's a big thing for them to realize that, oh, I can't combine x's and numbers because they're not the same tile, they're not the same term. And that's super, super important for them to figure out. So once they get that done, then they go, okay, well, let me start just grouping them together. So then I tell them, grab all your x's and kind of put them together in the same spot. Grab all your unit tiles, kind of put them together in the same spot, and now start thinking about what you have, right? And so then they go, okay, well, I see that I have 5 positive x tiles, but then I have 1 negative x tile, right? And then they go, okay, over here, I can see that I have 10 unit tiles that are positive, but then I have -4. And then the big thing that we teach them in our CPM curriculum is that when you have a positive tile and a negative tile that are the same, they zero out. And it's a big word. I like to use zero out. I don't like to use the word cancel that much because math teachers use cancel a lot, and they use it for canceling fractions out. And when you're dividing by the same number, oh, it cancels. And oh, when we add and subtract the same number, it cancels. And it's not really understanding what's happening. So when I have a positive x and I take away an x, that's becoming 0. It zeroes out. 1 minus 1 is 0. And once we have those, then we can move them off the screen. And that's kind of a big thing for them to realize, oh, I only have 4 x's, right? And then if I can grab, let's see if I can grab a text box real quick to just kind of show that. We have 2, whoops, I can't type and talk at the same time, right? So then we realize 2 x's plus 3 x's, take away that x, those are all the x tiles there, it ends up just being 4 x's. And so we always try to make that connection. Well, 2 plus 3 is 5. 5 minus 1, that's where those 4 x's come from. And so again, it's the hope is that eventually they can do that expression without the tiles, right? We don't want them to keep pulling out these tiles, but initially it's just super helpful for them to visually see, oh, I grab the x tiles, I combine them, any positive and negatives, they zero out. And then we do the same thing over here on the unit tiles, right? There's a pair that are going to 0. We just put them away off our table. We just keep doing that until we're left with no more positives and negatives. And then they can get their final answer, which would end up being, what is this? 4x plus, I can't count, 6. And so that's the really cool part about these tiles, is that it helps them get to that point of combining them. And it really, really helps their brains to understand that I can't combine an x term and a number term, a constant. They are not the same thing. But that's algebra tiles.
And what I love, Jordan, that really blew my mind is I had never visually seen that. And maybe it could be, I don't know if it should be in the other virtual tiles that I use, but I love that explanation as far as the X and the Y not being the same size. And then of course with the units not being the same size. And that right there just really added an additional component to what I'm already learning and doing and definitely be sharing. But I love the construction of this, but also I love that reflection piece where you brought them out and then now, okay, let's write out this side of the equation, what you have, and you're making that connection, building out the other side and seeing what you have. And I loved it. I loved it. This is something that's great. And I think even with 1 or 2 of these problems, that could be that, okay, here's the initial teach. Now you guys practice and then you walk around, come back, and getting them engaged. But man, that was an absolutely great demo. Thank you so much, Jordan. That really blew my mind, and I'm going to share that clip with our math content specialist too, because we'll probably be sharing it in our Google Classrooms with our math teachers as well. So that's great.
I'll just say I have to shout out Gail Stanford. She was the one who taught me these tiles. She is the only reason why I'm halfway decent with them is all her. She had to, it was a lot of PD sessions of her trying to teach me. Cause initially I was like, why do they need this? Like, just look at the X's, add them, subtract them, do it. But because that it just clicks for me that way. But for our students, once it's foreign to them, they need something they can actually touch. And it's just really nice to see that.
Man, Jordan. Well, thank you so much, Jordan. I
Yeah.
really appreciate you coming on the show
Yeah.
this morning. I know it's very early over there, but
Yeah,
thank you
it's
so
all
much
good.
for your energy. Thank you so much
Yeah.
for what you're doing for your students. And just with the math, I mean, you are definitely doing some great things. And I must commend you because what you're doing with the algebra tiles and just bringing that greater understanding and making students feel comfortable and maybe even helping students realize, like, hey, I am a math person. Yes,
Yeah.
I can do this, and building that confidence that really will help a lot of our students hopefully continue in some STEM fields, just because some of them may be scared, like, oh, I'm not a math person, I can never do that. But now with this, I mean, it opens up a lot of doors. So I'm
Yeah.
just very thankful for you. Now,
Thank you.
before we finish the show, this is
Yeah.
one of my favorite parts where now we kind of as we wrap up the show, we get a little fun here. And so I'll always ask my guests the following 3 questions here.
Mhm.
So hopefully you're ready.
Yeah.
So, question number 1, in the current state of education, what would you say is your current edu kryptonite?
Current edu kryptonite. It's a good question. I would say, that's a good question. My current edu kryptonite with just the current school system is not having enough time. I always feel like, and I did a funny video one time on my TikTok of my kids impersonating me, and one of them was like, "All right, guys, welcome to class. We're behind." And then she was, and I was like, "Oh, do I say that a lot?" And she was like, "Yeah, Miss Roscoe. Every time you would be in class, you would say, 'Oh, we're behind. We need to be where we need to be.'" And I wish that I could slow it down more. And it might be more on me than the actual curriculum, but I always feel like I'm trying to like keep this pace going. And because we got to hit all these standards before we take that state test at the end of the year. And I'm always freaking out, like, okay, I got to keep the pacing going. And I wish that we could slow it down enough for the students' pace that they need to be at. And I know that that probably would never happen because we have to keep pushing them. But I wish that we could slow it down enough so that every student got an equitable amount of time that they needed to access the curriculum, to learn it on their own, to discover it, and not be having me apparently just say, we're out of time every time I come in the room.
All right, perfect. So maybe more time, or maybe just
Yeah.
tweaking the curriculum enough to where you don't feel so much pressure. I mean, and you're still covering, but you're right. I mean, you have to cover those standards. And I know every teacher finds themselves in, like, okay, we got to be here, and so on. But yeah, I get it. All right, next question, Jordan. If you can have a billboard with anything on it, what would it be and why?
Well, it would have to say "Stream Math Rap" by that math magician. We haven't even had a chance to talk about it, but I kind of blew up this summer because I made a math rap at the end of the last year. My students, I always joke that I can rap in class, and I make like very corny math like references, and they're like, "Mr. Oscar, you're terrible." And I was like, I can make a math rap. I can actually do this. This is very easy. And then I said that, and then I actually had to do it. But then when I did it, it kind of blew up this summer. I got to go on all the local news stations around here, even on the radio station, our local hip hop station. I got to go on there and actually do a little freestyle for them. So I was just living my dream this past summer. And then I even got an article through ABC that kind of went nationwide. So that was super cool. Very cool to see.
That's
I'll look at
awesome.
my mom chiming in. That's my mom.
Aw, Paula, thank you so much for
Yeah,
joining.
my
Your son,
parents, they're I love them to death. They're
your
the
son
best.
is awesome. Your son is awesome. All right, so now I'm gonna have to put you on the spot now,
Yeah.
because you said you do a little bit of freestyling.
Oh my,
So
okay, wait, let me preface that. The freestyle I did, they told me about, and I made it on my phone prior to going.
okay, no worries, it's all good. But maybe, like, just for our audience members and
Yeah.
all that'll be listening, maybe if you can give us a couple of bars there of what you share, and we're just having some fun. And again, I love what you're doing because you're making math go viral. So if
Yeah.
we could just get a little bit of a little taste there of the some math raps here.
Wow, that is actually putting me on the spot. And what I'm doing is I'm going to my lyrics that I had typed up
Yeah.
for one of my songs because at all. Rap
Yeah.
and freestyle. But for my first math rap, I actually talk about algebra and we talk about solving for x and all that stuff. So anyway, I have to give myself a little beat so I can go. I said, wait, I gotta figure it. One, two, ready, go. There's a system. What's the solution? Elimination or substitution? Trying to find where these lines intersect. Check your graph. We want to be correct. So that was just kind of talking about how we use elimination, substitution to figure out, where two lines intersect. So
There you
trying to make
go.
it a little relatable.
Hey, but that's awesome, and that's what we need. And again, for all our learners that are out there, I mean, honestly, I mean, they learn so quickly. They learn through video. They
Yeah.
learn. They're all sorts of visual, like hands-on, all sorts of learners. But the fact that you're hitting a lot of those components and
Yeah.
in a combination with the curriculum, that's great. And I really commend you for that. And the fact that you're not scared to step out of that box and be
Yeah.
yourself. But in the end, the goal is to help your students succeed. And if that's what it takes, that you're doing an amazing job, and I
Thank
definitely
you.
admire you for that.
I
Because
appreciate it.
yeah,
I
so
just
keep.
I just released a song called MX plus B, and it's all about graphing a line. And I actually the music video premiered yesterday, and I had my school has it's called DVTV. It's a they put on the news every day for us. They do the morning announcements, but they film it. And it's kind of like a news program they got. I pulled kids from there. I didn't actually pull them. They asked if they could help, and I said yes, please help. I grab as many as you can, and they did the whole video for me. They helped me with it, and they were I was super excited. We had a fog machine at one point, a strobe light. It was just going crazy. But it's literally how to graph a line, talking about you need the y-intercept, you need the slope, and it's in a 3-minute song. And I'm hoping that a kid can hear it, maybe memorize a little bit of it, and then on a test, it might come back to them like, oh, I need this, I need this, I got maybe I got to rise, maybe I got to fall with the slope. So I'm hoping it hits them.
Yeah, no, and again, I love it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to definitely put those links up there in
Oh, cool.
the pod page and everything, so that everybody can reach out to you and check those out and check those videos out. But also, I definitely encourage anybody to follow Jordan on Instagram, on Twitter, on TikTok. Definitely TikTok, so you can see the videos. And if
Yeah.
you're interested in more kind of algebra tile action, definitely go to TikTok where you can kind of see what he's doing in class and doing those warm ups and everything, just in case you're curious and maybe
Yeah.
want to implement. Hey, and I'm pretty sure Jordan might be, would you be willing, like if somebody like reached out to you and say, hey,
Yes.
would you be able to help? Yeah. So definitely.
Absolutely. Yeah, they can definitely reach out. That Math Magician, all one word, across all my social media. And I also have a playlist on my YouTube page about algebra tiles, sort of introducing them. And I did it because for my students, I always want them to have that with them.
Awesome.
I made a whole video about it, and there's about playlists. I mean, there's a bunch of videos that people can watch too to kind of understand how they work. Yeah, they're great
Excellent.
tools.
All right, Jordan. Last question.
Yes.
All right. Let's say that this was the Math Magician podcast this morning, and I was a guest on your show. What would be one question you'd like to ask me?
Yes. Oh, that's a good question. I would. Oh, if I had my own podcast, which I've actually have thought about. My students say I need to make my own podcast,
Do
and
it.
I'm like, with what time? I have no time. I'm also in school getting my master's right now. I'm like, I have no time to do any of this. But I would probably ask. If I imagine my last question would probably be for each guest. How do you try to find the magic in math? That would be my question, because math can be very magical.
Mhm.
But how could you find the magic in math? Or when was there a time that you did find the magic in math? That would be
Well, for
fun.
me, like I've always been a math person,
Yeah.
and so I've always found math to be very magical. And to be honest with you, okay, so and this may really age me big time, but it doesn't matter. I don't care. But when I was teaching, I went from all the way from high school, and then I
Mhm.
went into elementary. The first thing that I did before I even started teaching my curriculum and teaching math is I would share a movie called Donald in Math
Yes.
Magic Land. I every year, that was the first thing that I did at the
Yep.
beginning of the year for all my students, that although it seemed cheesy and corny and very outdated,
Yeah.
what they showed there as far as how the connections with math, making it relatable in back then in the terms that they had, but with construction and of course
Yeah.
the Fibonacci sequence, and
Yes.
you've got all of that. A lot of the students were like, whoa,
Yeah.
I never thought about this. And of course, they never do, because it's not part of our curriculum at that given time. But
Mhm.
that's the way that I would help kind of add that little magic per se, making those connections and kind of priming them up to have an open mind, to not just think about what 3 plus 2 is, but
Yeah.
to see what 3 plus 2 can do. And then one of the things that I love too is when we would do our walks, when we were doing area, I would take all the kids outside of the school or outside of my classroom, be like,
Mhm.
all right, guys, I need you either to, and back then, I mean, they all have devices for the most part. And so since it was BYOD, it's like, I want you to take pictures of math. And they're like, well, what do you mean? Anything that you see,
Yeah.
that you think is math, I want you to take pictures of it.
That's
And
so cool.
I didn't really give them like what to look for. And then they just started snapping away. And then we'd come back and we review and say, hey, is this math? Is this not math? So then all of a sudden you'd see some kids that were, just taking pictures of the floor tiles. We had kiddos that were taking pictures of the extinguisher. And people are like, well, why are you taking pictures of the extinguisher? It's like, because of the shape. But also, if you notice here, it says how many ounces, and so
Mm,
on, milk
yeah,
cartons, things of that sort. So it was amazing because again, it allowed me to see how they think about math
yeah,
and at least making it visual, but also for them to have fun and make those connections to the real world
yeah.
experience as well. So that's how I loved bringing the math magic into the
Yeah,
classroom.
there we go, awesome. I will say I show that video probably once a year, usually when I need a break. I'm like, it's usually before a grading period. I'm like, "Oh god, please Donald Duck can teach for a bit." Yeah, it's a
Yeah,
great
but
video.
it's such a great video. It
I
really
love
is,
it,
and I
yeah.
love it. I love it. I can watch that all the
Yeah.
time. All right, Jordan. Well, thank you. Thank you so much
Thank
for
you, I
making the
appreciate it.
time out of your day to be here. It really filled my heart with joy just to hear you talk, hear your enthusiasm, hear how you are bringing, math to a new level with making math go viral with your videos, the enthusiasm you put into it with the math tiles and just your heart, man. I can really tell that you
Thank you.
definitely have a heart for this. And I
I
wish
do.
you the best as you work on your masters and continued success, my friend. Thank you so much. But before we go, also, please, again, if you can let our audience members know where they can go ahead and find you on your socials. So go ahead and plug
Yeah.
away, my friend.
I mean, everywhere. YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, anything you can think of. It's just that math magician. One word, all stuck together, lowercase. Find me there, and you might come across some lame, corny math dad jokes at times. But I'm hoping we can get some more math content out to everybody.
Excellent. Well, thank you all also as well for joining us. Thank you so much. Miss Orozco, thank you so much for joining us too as well. Thank you so much to Sherry also for joining us. We had Tanya joining us. And for anybody that's going to be watching and listening to this podcast later on as well, as always, from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for all of your continued support. Please make sure that you visit our website at myedtech.life, so you can catch this amazing episode and other amazing episodes where you can go ahead and find some amazing teacher practice, some amazing enthusiasm from wonderful educators and creators from around the world that can definitely help you sprinkle on a little additional sauce to what you're already doing great. And also, please make sure you stop by our merch store where you can get some My EdTech Life merch. Fall and winter's around the corner. We've got some great hoodies. So if you want to support our show and support our mission of connecting educators and creators one show at a time, please stop by our store. And, we definitely appreciate your support. And thank you, as always, from the bottom of my heart for everything that you guys do. And my friends, until next time, don't forget, stay techie. Y'all take care.